Yes.
Awesome. Okay, well, thanks everyone to this session of the secure brainstorming session. Today we are talking about transitioning templates from the only accept or deprecated only accept syntax to rules and rules exists. So this initially was born out of our secure templates, and it looks like other templates might be affected by the same thing. So Configure is working on transitioning theirs, or may not transition them. And I believe that that is it, having looked over the other templates around. Some background on this real quick. We've had customers ask us about this because they will look up the configuration syntax and see that only an accept are deprecated and they should switch to rules, but they can't actually switch to rules because within a job, you can only use one or the other. So unfortunately, because they are exclusive, it means that they need to hard break the transition. For GitLab.com, if we were going to do the hard break, which was our original idea, that would mean we are at some point going to auto deploy something out there that breaks all pipelines that are overriding only accept. And they will have to manually update all of their CI jobs. That should only affect those who are actually overriding that, which we don't have great data on how many that is, but that's why we essentially decided that we just need to do a hard break, because we didn't have a good idea on how to proceed there. So I would say that there are three real approaches to that, which are outlined here: approach A, B, and C, which have a lot more comments than the last time I looked. So before we dig into those, does anyone have anything to add?
We did a session last night from the PAX time. So we discussed a bit and added some comments. And the question one I have is about the approach A statement, which says this will break everyone's pipelines. And this is something I'm not 100% sure, but I would expect everyone using the default vendor template without overriding it to have a smooth transition. Understanding that if they are overriding the only accept statement, they will get something broken.
Yes.
Okay.
Only if they're overriding it. I'll fix that wording, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of option A, just a hard break, I think that's a really difficult thing to swallow unless we give people a lot of time and notice. And even that, it's very easy to miss any of the deprecation notices. So I just that option I think is very, very difficult for me to push forward. Just from a customer perspective, I think that's a pretty terrible experience.
They know it's a breaking change version. It's a major release. They will get some breaking changes. To me, the issue we have right now is we announced that change, but the problem is due to the incompatibility between the two approaches, we cannot do the usual process, which is first introduce the new way and deprecate the old one, but keep supporting it. For a waiting period, you can play with both so that you get enough time to users to adapt, and then you drop support for the old way in the major release, which is the breaking change. But we can't do that here. So what we are missing in that specific case is a time period to let user adapt to this change. But they know that switching to 13.0, they will get breaking changes. So to me,
yeah, I completely agree. Like, yeah, if you upgrade to 13.0, it's just nice if you have a couple of months before 13.0 or the major release to minimize the number of breaking changes. Whereas if we have this breaking change and it's like, oh, they only had a month or two to actually know about it, it just means the amount of work they have for that upgrade is pretty substantial.
There's also an issue because GitLab.com, we can't really share our deployment schedule, so that would just happen whenever they're.
Yeah, this is a real issue.
To whenever.
But here we're talking mostly about big customers that override this with a very complicated set of rules that will take time to transition from only accept to the rule exists syntax. And this is where we might need to let them enough time. So, I mean, currently, technically, the only approach they can have is open merge request to fix your template, wait for the upgrade, and once you've upgraded, then you can merge them to fix your pipeline. And this is what we should ask PM to decide, is this acceptable or not? I mean, PM, sales, and support, because they will be handling such requests. Just to clarify, what is the technical path for this approach? But I don't have any more opinion about if it's acceptable or not.
I have a silly question, and I'm probably beating a dead horse here, but is there a way we can get rid of the rules syntax and the only syntax as well? Because that's the source of a problem. So if we remove that requirement in the first place, we don't have any problem anymore.
You mean not, sorry, you mean not use those at all in the templates?
Yeah.
I don't see any
them
way we
correctly
could not use those.
Well, why do we use only except today, and why would we use rules in the future? Just because we don't have a detection layer. So maybe the question is, how can we make the detection layer better so that we don't have to use only accept or the rules in the end?
We also use it for license enforcement.
Ah, yes, the variable, the
GitLab
GitLab features.
And not an
Yes.
option to disable, because we have environment variable that allow to disable some features. It's a smart idea, but that might come with a lot of prerequisite work.
So I guess to evaluate these things, let me go over these three approaches, and if anyone has anything else they can think of, then we can consider that. So approach one, or approach A, is the first thing we talked about, which is just do a hard break. There's obvious drawbacks to that. But that means that customers are living on the edge and they get the latest changes. Unfortunately, B and C both mean that they will have to opt in at some point to the newer version, which we know many people probably won't do. So we will have to support the old way for the foreseeable future until we maybe drop it in 14.0. So approach B is we introduce version templates. And sorry, I don't have this link handy. This is an issue that Thomas opened. But essentially, if we start versioning our templates, that would solve this as well. So we have SAST v13, GitLab, CI, YAML, and at some point, customers include a version template. That way, it matches whatever version their CI major version is. Bunch of variations as well. We could pin to minor, but it's going to introduce a lot of complexity, and it could be very difficult to actually maintain. We have versioned images, versioned GitLab instances, and version templates as well. Approach C is a bit more complex. That's kind of a complex hierarchy of inheritance. So where we have base jobs that have the normal setup, and then we inherit those into two child jobs. So the first child uses rules, and the second child uses only accept. And in the case of this link on point number 6, that is a proof of concept that includes 2 examples of each. They both are not awesome in my opinion, but I guess we just have to figure out which one is the least not awesome.
Could you please share your screen and explain a bit, because we looked at that yesterday. Sure. And I was kind of thinking it was just showing one use case, but I didn't have time to dig into the C approach. So I would like getting more context about this one, if you could. You're muted.
Thanks. So this first one is the approach B. So obviously version 13. So you include dependency tuning v13. And then this much larger one is the.
You did explain that yesterday. That's why.
Yeah. So for SAST, we have a SAST analyzer here, and then we inherit we extend that using SAST Analyzer 13. We have Bandit here, which extends 13 and uses the server version major to determine whether this job executes. And then way down, I'll scroll down, we have a SAST Analyzer 12, which is inherited here, and that just uses the previous only syntax with the addition of CI major version. So this, I just renamed some stuff, so I'm pretty sure this is valid syntax or a valid CI file, but I don't think this will quite run because I just realized that this is different than that. So the basic idea is here, obviously the benefit of using rules is that we can do things like this, or a more complex thing would be depending on our Brakeman analyzer. Brakeman here, I just ported the exact only rules over, so it basically just looks for Ruby files, but we can actually specify application RB here. Or in the case of the dependency scanning template, oops. Bundler audit can actually use gem files.
I agree it's working, but I don't buy it. I mean, from the user perspective,
they will need to override different jobs because it's tied to the job name then. So if people are overriding like Bandit 12, they need to update the template to get Bandit 13, right?
So yes, I think that in this case, so I think that this would probably have to be inverted then. So currently this would break their setup. I think instead we need to introduce new names for this. So this should be Bandit SAS 13. Otherwise, this is going to conflict with whatever their existing overrides are. Yeah.
So we're ending up in the same situation at approach B where
Yep. Both are
we need
essentially
opt-in.
present.
We need always new for every new version we're running, we need opt-in from the users. So we need to ask them to update constantly the template, which is defeating the purpose of vendering, because the initial goal of vendering the template was to allow them to have nothing to do, because they were sure to get the template that is compatible with their GitLab instance and have benefits from the new features we're releasing. But this was with the idea that we don't do breaking changes. I agree.
could we maybe add a job in the templates that would be the same job, so it would be overridden if you had a SAST and dependency scanning at the same time, for example, which would be allowed to fail. So the pipeline will turn a range saying you're using, the job would analyze the pipeline configuration and say you're using only except in conjunction with SAST and dependency scanning, it's going to break in the next 2-3 months. So they have a huge warning so that they know they have to do something. I
don't think that we have a mechanism as an organization to provide a clear warning about that. Like if it's in the job log, they're not going to see it.
No, but a job would fail. So you would have an arranged pipeline. There's no way you can miss that.
I guess I don't quite follow them. Wouldn't that be the same thing as making the breaking change?
It's not a breaking change because you can introduce that job right now saying if you don't do anything with your pipeline, it's going to fail in like a month from now or 2 months from now.
We don't have those 3 months because the company is switching right now for auto DevOps.
So that's a breaking change. It's not on us, it's the company. But we need to do that breaking change. this
Yeah,
complexity that we are going to introduce with this versioning or the versioning of the jobs, that's going to be a nightmare for the users in the next year.
I guess the
Imagine that
biggest
you're a new
problem,
user and stumble upon that.
I think the breaking change would be fine if it actually broke the job, but it breaks the pipeline, and that's a much more significant breakage, because it's going to be an invalid CI, like invalid syntax, and so all pipelines won't work.
Yeah, but am I wrong saying that the decision has been made already? If the company is switching to the rule syntax, then the company accepts that we are going to break things. It's a breaking change. So we should have thought that maybe 6 months ago from now. It's a bit too late for us. We need to follow, and unfortunately, we'll make some users unhappy, the users that are using our jobs and only statements.
Yeah, but maybe the other impacted stages don't have only ultimate customers, which makes the problem more important for us. I don't know, it's an assumption.
I'm not so sure.
Sorry, Philippe, are you saying only accept no longer will work after 13.0?
Well, if we switch all the templates to the rule syntax, it's not only us. Yes, it's everything. Also, everything that is based on auto DevOps.
Okay.
So that's why we are in this urge of updating our templates, because it's either we follow the company policy, the new company policy where the rule syntax is the new default, or we don't follow it and it's not working with any other templates that would be, for example, auto DevOps or like things. And there's no way you can have only accept in auto DevOps for all jobs and the rule syntax for the other jobs. It's going to lose completely the users.
So Horder, speaking as our configure person here, is there a reason that auto DevOps should move to rules beyond only accept being deprecated? Is there actual benefit for the other jobs?
We primarily wanted to get the file detection logic for the test job. That was like our main motivation, because right now, if somebody uses a Docker file for the build, they will still run like a potentially irrelevant Heroku-ish test job that will just fail like all the time. And we have an easy way for them to not run it. So that was our main motivation. We even did this already in one of the 12-point-something releases, not knowing that it was going to break stuff. And then somebody complained, and that's why we postponed it to 13.0.
Okay, so if we choose to not make a breaking change now, are we all in agreement that we would need to wait till 14.0 to do it? Or would it be an option to actually make this change halfway through a release cycle? I don't think it would.
Well, there were the proposals by Remy about making this a non-breaking change, right? Like where we can upgrade the parser to allow overriding. That was one. I forget. Yeah, there was that one, and also another one that makes it less of a breaking change, where you can nullify one or the other from an override. So you could like making an empty only allowed with rules and an empty rules allowed with only. So those were like two different syntax upgrades that would both make this much less of an issue. And I feel like even that one, especially that one, we might be able to just do as part of 13.0.
Be great.
Does anyone have a familiarity with this portion of the code base? And so do we have enough capacity within our teams to actually do this, or domain knowledge, or would we depend on Verify for this part? I saw that Remy did a little.
Is that running actually? Because I thought there were no way to override only and accept even with an anti-hash. Because if you do use hash,
these are both feature requests.
Okay, so feature request.
Yeah. So in this case, this is the proposed example of what he's saying should work here. And this would solve our problem because we could simply extend from that base job and within the same template, zero out the only except and introduce the rule syntax.
Yeah, because
There-
that version currently is not going to work because the only is going to be merged in the parent job, and in the end you have the same only refs master as you have in job A.
I mean, I think that this does introduce kind of a weird thing though, where we're essentially going to be, this is going to provide a bit of a non-intuitive behavior unless a customer really knows how this override works. But it is an improvement to move forward.
The problem is, if I understand, job B is what the customer would use.
Yes.
Customers don't do extends. They override the existing job. They don't extend our job into another one.
Yep.
This is where the difference will be, and what Philip, I think, it was talking about. If we want this to work, yeah.
Do we know how that works internally? Is that a distinction in terms of how the job is processed?
I think this is implying a different merging process. If you're extending or if you're overriding, I'm not 100% sure. So
Yeah, the part where you use the angle, like the brackets with a star to extend, that's like a YAML thing, and that will be expanded before we start parsing, like the, fancy CI logic parsing, and then the extends is something that we do in our business logic.
So this would not solve our immediate use case. And this one,
It would, because you would still see an only with like an empty only with a rules as you start the logic. It would just be allowed in the same job. You could just remove the, the extends thing is actually misleading. Like what we are proposing is that a rules can coincide in a job with an like empty only and the other way around. I don't think it needs to be limited to extends.
I think that makes sense. Okay. So this. Okay, so in this case, what a customer would still need to empty out rules manually. So this would still require a CI update for all customers to prevent it from breaking. So unfortunately, it would still be a breaking change, but it would make the process a bit easier. Alternatively, this one, which is rules should always take precedent over only except and vice versa. This one would not be a breaking change, but it would be a bit less intuitive, I think.
Yeah, but again, it's specifying that it's about child job. If we can make this with overrides instead of just child jobs, I would agree. But Audrey, you seem to say that it's actually possible, but I just want to make sure it is, because the current proposal is not what we are using.
Yeah, I mean, this is a modification of extendable. I don't know if I'm taking that too literally. I'm not familiar with these models. But assuming it's generic enough to cover both cases, maybe the question should be which of these two proposals would be best to target in 13.0, assuming we have capacity, assuming that this is the best way to move forward, which it seems like this is the best way to move forward if we want to avoid a hard break. I think this one is nicest because obviously it's not going to break pipelines.
So we need a way to figure out if when we are merging everything, we know if there are only except and rules, we know which one was the last override part. Like if we have rules in the default template and people override that with only, we use only and we get rid of the rules. But do we have the ability to know this? And this is where I'm not sure we are, because it can be told because when you're doing child templates, because child jobs, because you have this extension process. But when it's just about overriding, I don't know if we know that hierarchy when processing it.
And I'm afraid that if we use that, that means the rules that we define are going to be dropped. So we will end up with some edge cases where the jobs will not behave exactly how they're supposed to behave. So in the end, that means the user will have to update their pipeline anyway. So I agree it's not breaking the pipelines, but still will require the users to do something.
But again, it's only for those who are actually overriding, which we don't have that number, but I imagine that that's a smaller amount.
I agree.
And they can opt in at a given time. So it's not perfect, but this does seem, in my opinion, to be the best way forward, assuming that this covers overrides, not just extends.
No, this definitely only covers override. No, I mean extends, because overrides will be seen. I'm like 99% sure this will only cover extends, because the override part will be done by just like YAML load. So then what the parser will see is a job that has both rules and only in it. Like it will not know that it was extended, I think.
So would the proposal, so maybe the alternative proposal to this would be something like allow rules and only accept within a single job definition, but ignore only accept in favor of rules or something of that nature. And that would break pipelines. I think either way that we choose a priority there will break. Well, sorry, it won't break pipelines. To be more specific with my language, this will probably result in unexpected behavior.
To ask a tangential question, in a situation where we have only accept and rules in a pipeline or in a CI file, what does the linter do?
It raises an error. Maybe you can do this in the linter right now, Lucas, because you have the screen share.
Yeah. I'll just use this one. So this should be valid. All right. Extends. Oh, because the extends. Okay. Yep. So this is valid.
We need to invent. Yeah, that's good.
And this would essentially be what we're adding, which means a pipeline will not run.
With instructions to saying that the CI configuration failed linting, or I don't remember exactly what the mirror message is, but that would be the behavior, right?
Yes.
Yeah, all the pipelines will start failing with basically this error, like these two error messages, like invalid syntax, and then it will also, I think, tell you about the rules and only problem. And like, I mean, all the pipelines where they are using these kind of overrides. And it's a little bit hard for them to figure out because it happens in a template that they are usually not thinking about. But I'm thinking, what if we just add a link to the error message in an FAQ for like this particular situation?
Well, the problem is not only the self-hosted instances, it's also that people will start seeing pipelines failing on GitLab.com suddenly. As soon as we push this change, all the pipelines that are using both are going to fail suddenly without any warning. So we're going to piss off a lot of users. You know, whatever the solution we're coming with.
I don't know how feasible this is, but I was also wondering if we could time the merge of this with the last release candidate for 13.0. So GitLab.com release is timed with 13.0 release, at least as close as we can get, which will require some coordination with maintainers, but that should be pretty doable.
That's the less loss.
So to wrap this up, since we're already over time, I want to write some conclusions here. So how do we feel about either of these two issues? Rather, what my thinking is could we explore one of these? And if we don't manage to get this into 13.0, we have a fallback strategy, which is one of the previous approaches.
Yeah, that's also the question. Is that going to be ready for 13.2? We're putting all the eggs in the same bucket here.
Yeah, I'm still in favor of just breaking stuff, but that's for like from my team because we don't have all our customers at Ultimate, so it's a bit different. I wasn't aware of that for Secure, so that really does change the priorities a little bit.
I mean, we can also do proactive notifications to customers, even if it has to be a blanket communication to all Ultimate customers.
So
I mean,
do you think
towards breaking changes as well? I don't like it, but I think we can communicate around it.
so you're still in favor of the breaking change as well, Taylor?
I am. I think we've got to move forward here, and it's a chicken and egg problem, and I don't like it, but we need to move forward with this, and I don't like the prospect of waiting until 14.
Okay. That I think is good enough for me. So I'm happy to make some MRs that make the changes, and we should just try and merge those then as close as we can to the last release candidate to try and time it with 13.0 rollout, and notify our customer support stable counterparts.
So I one thing just about the merging it this late, I have some reservations about that because we lose the benefit of using .com as a staging area for self-managed. So just yeah, that's all. So I would actually like to just break it really soon with like documentation that people can find when they run into the problem, ideally linking them to an FAQ from this error message so that they can just fix it right away. And then we'll see how many angry phone calls we get.
And there's, of course, no way to back off from this change. Say rules are not ready for 13.0. So be it, we move that to later on this year and we do that right. Because the only solution that we have right now is we're doing a mistake, so we're going to do it right. That feels a bit wrong to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we can switch back to only accept if we don't like the outcome. That would be pretty terrible.
I don't know, I'm just asking, talking about the implication of that.
So I think in option B in the document, we had the version templates. Is there another way? I think letter F was to have like a parallel template where you have like SAST rules and then we include one or the other, and that way people could easily just change to a different template.
Yeah, I mean, we could, if we wanted to provide a mechanism for immediately fixing what what we did to your job, this is probably the alternative, which is include remote pinned to 1210. And that way, that's already built in. That's already a version way that we release these. It's not going to work if you're air gapped, but if you're air gapped, you can probably figure this out with copy and pasting the contents.
Got it. So we wouldn't
But,
need a
yeah.
template. It's as long as we have this somewhere that people can easily figure this out.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be our help page is going to be, here's how you should do this. If you really don't want to do it this way, here's what we strongly recommend you don't do. But yeah, I probably won't write that, but we'll find someone who's more diplomatic for that part. Okay.
Yeah, it's either that or otherwise they don't get any updates in the future. So it's not great in any case.
Yep. Closing thoughts. Cool. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I'll summarize this in the issue. And yeah, please contribute back to the Epic threads if you have any additional comments.
Thank you, Lucas. We
Thanks,
know
Lucas.
that it's there's no unique solution to that, and any choice that we're going to make, we're going to piss off someone. So, thank you for holding all of this again.